All right, so today we're diving into one of the most talked about paranormal cases out there.
Oh, yeah.
The Enfield Poltergeist.
Absolutely.
A classic. Most folks probably know this case from the movie, but we're going to be looking at a lot more than just that.
Yeah, we've got firsthand accounts from the people who were there. We have police reports. We've got investigations from paranormal experts and skeptics alike.
Yep, and this is really, I think, a deep dive into a case like this is so fascinating because it really does pit those two sides against each other, right?
Absolutely.
You have the believers and you have the skeptics.
And it's not just ghost stories, you know. We're talking about documented events scrutinized by people with very different perspectives.
So let's set the stage here. What exactly happened in Enfield?
Okay, so we're in 1977 in a seemingly ordinary council house in Enfield, London. Single mom Peggy Hodgson lives there with her 4 kids. And
4 kids?
Yeah, 4 kids. They start experiencing all this bizarre stuff.
Like what kind of stuff are we talking?
Yeah, furniture moving, knocking sounds, and even get this, a police constable actually witnessed a chair moving on its own.
Wait a second, so we have a police officer actually seeing something like that?
Yeah.
That's not your typical ghost story.
Exactly, and that's kind of what launched this whole thing into the spotlight.
Makes sense.
The media gets a hold of it and things just kind of blow up.
Yeah.
And then, of course, who comes knocking?
The paranormal investigators.
All sorts of paranormal investigators, all wanting to see what's happening.
Now, are these some of the big names that we're talking about here?
Oh, yeah. So this is where you get Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair.
Okay.
From the Society for Psychical Research, or the SPR.
Those are some big names in the paranormal field.
Big names. They were there for over 18 months.
Wow.
Documenting all sorts of phenomena.
Like what?
They're reporting disembodied voices, objects being thrown around, even claims of the children levitating.
Okay, hold on a second. Levitating children.
Yeah.
Now, this is getting into some pretty intense paranormal territory.
Absolutely. And then to make things even more interesting, you have Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh, the Warrens.
The Warrens themselves, the inspiration for The Conjuring.
Yeah.
They flew all the way from the U.S. to investigate this.
Wow. So we've got like a paranormal all-star team assembled in this council house.
It's like the Avengers of the paranormal world.
But I imagine not everyone was buying into this.
Oh, of course not. You always have the other side of the coin. Enter stage magician Milburn Christopher.
Okay.
He was not convinced at all.
What did he think was going on?
Well, he examined the case, looked at the evidence and concluded there was no proof of anything paranormal. He thought it was probably just a clever child playing tricks.
Ah, so maybe some of this was staged.
That was his theory.
Now, one of the Hodgson children, specifically Janet, became the focus of a lot of this, right?
Oh, yeah, Janet Hodgson. She was right in the middle of it all.
And there were people who suspected she was behind some of these events.
Yeah, some observers noticed she was doing things like bending spoons. And there was a suspicion that maybe she was faking some of this.
Interesting. So we've got believers, we've got skeptics, we've got levitating children. This is getting really complex.
And that's why we're doing a deep dive.
Exactly.
We're going to untangle this web of events, look at the evidence, consider all the different interpretations.
And trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
We're going to get into some even more interesting stuff as we go deeper into this case.
All right, well, buckle up, everybody, because this deep dive into the Enfield Poltergeist is about to get even more fascinating.
You got it. So last time we were talking about, the Enfield case.
Yeah, set of the scene.
The key players, both believers and skeptics.
Right.
But now let's kind of switch gears a little bit and look at some of the arguments that suggest maybe some of this wasn't, supernatural.
Okay, so we're putting on our skeptical hats now.
Exactly.
You mentioned that stage magician, Milburn Christopher.
Yeah.
He suspected there might be some trickery going on.
Right.
What did he actually find?
Well, he and other skeptics pointed out that a lot of these, poltergeist activities, they always seem to happen when no one was actually watching Janet.
That's a bit convenient, isn't it?
It is a little suspicious, right?
Like a magician getting ready for the big reveal.
Exactly.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah. And then you have those photographs, the famous one of Janet levitating above her bed.
Oh, yeah, that's a creepy image.
It's a classic, right? But skeptics like Joe Nickel from CSA Cop.
CSA Cop?
Yeah, the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
All right, a mouthful.
They argued that the photo just caught Janet at the right moment. She was bouncing on the bed, and the timing of the photo made it look like she was floating.
I see. So it's more of a trick of the eye than actual levitation?
Yeah, our brains are wired to see patterns, and, sometimes we see things that aren't really there.
Especially when we're expecting something paranormal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, CSI Cop, these guys, they were all about debunking paranormal claims using scientific methods.
Right.
They really scrutinized the Enfield case, and Nickel in particular pointed out that a lot of the stories, especially the ones in the media, might have been exaggerated or even made up to sell papers.
Sensationalism at its finest.
Yeah, so maybe some things were embellished.
Right. But what about those disembodied voices?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right?
Surely a child couldn't fake something like that.
Well, that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Because remember how some people noticed Janet putting her hand over her mouth just before one of those voices would speak?
Yeah, I remember that detail.
Some researchers thought maybe she was practicing ventriloquism.
Wow, a ventriloquist act in the middle of a poltergeist investigation.
Yeah, talk about a twist, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the voice itself.
Right, Bill Wilkins.
Right, identifying as Bill Wilkins, this guy who died in the house years ago.
Yeah.
And get this, during a radio show about the case, a listener called in saying they recognized the voice as their own father.
That's spooky.
It's like something out of a horror movie, but remember, we're trying to be skeptical here.
Right, keeping those skeptical hats on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So skeptics suggested that maybe Janet had picked up information about Bill Wilkins somehow,
Yeah.
From conversations with family or neighbors.
Right.
And it just kind of resurfaced in her subconscious.
So like cryptomnesia.
Exactly. That's the term for it. Those forgotten memories that come back and we think there's something new or paranormal.
Interesting. So our mind's playing tricks on us again.
It happens more often than we realize. But here's a question for you.
Okay, I'm listening.
If Janet was faking some of this,
Right.
why did she later on deny ever being haunted?
Yeah, that's a good point. Why would she change her story?
It's a question that sparked a lot of debate.
I bet.
Maybe she regretted the attention,
Right.
wanted to distance herself from the whole thing.
Makes sense.
Or maybe as she got older, she realized some of it could be explained naturally and felt embarrassed about it all.
Yeah, I mean, she was just a kid in the middle of this media circus.
Exactly. It must have been incredibly overwhelming for her.
And that brings up a really important point.
What's that?
Even if we accept that maybe there was some trickery involved,
Right.
or some psychological factors at play,
Yeah,
that doesn't necessarily mean everything was fake,
you got it.
right? The Enfield case is a complex one.
It is.
And there might be pieces of the puzzle that we just can't explain.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to explore next time.
Right.
Some alternative perspectives that go beyond just trickery.
Okay.
And consider the realm of the unexplained.
Okay, so we've spent the last couple of deep dives, really digging into this Enfield Poltergeist case.
Yeah.
We've seen the evidence,
Mm-hmm.
the skepticism, the just plain weirdness of it all.
It's a wild one.
It really is. But before we wrap things up, I think we need to consider some other explanations, right?
Absolutely. Because
Okay.
even with the possibility of, some trickery, some psychological stuff going on, there are still parts of this case that just make you wonder.
Right, like what if there's more to it than just a simple explanation?
Exactly.
Okay, so where do we even begin with these alternative perspectives?
Well, let's go back to Janet Hodgson.
Okay.
Remember how she was at the center of all this activity?
Yeah, the epicenter of the weirdness.
Right, and some researchers, particularly those who are open to the paranormal,
Okay.
they suggest that maybe Janet was just really sensitive to psychic energy.
So not faking it, but like channeling something.
Exactly, like she was a conduit for something beyond her control.
Almost like an antenna picking up on some unseen force.
That's the idea, and this concept is called psychokinesis.
Psychokinesis.
Yeah, it's the idea that the mind can actually influence the physical world.
Whoa.
And some believe that kids, with their developing minds,
Yeah.
they might be more prone to these kinds of experiences.
So instead of consciously throwing things around, maybe it was her subconscious mind making it happen.
It's a possibility. But what about those disembodied voices, though?
Right, that's what I was just thinking. Could psychokinesis explain that too?
That's where things get really interesting. Some researchers think those voices could have been a form of independent voice phenomenon.
Independent voice phenomenon.
Yeah, it's a complicated idea, but essentially it suggests that thoughts or emotions can kind of be externalized,
Okay.
and we perceive them as sounds.
So like a waking dream, where the line between inside and outside gets blurry.
Exactly.
So maybe the voices weren't coming from a spirit, but from Janet's own mind, manifesting in a way we just don't understand.
It's one way to look at it.
It's almost creepier to think that the source of the haunting could be within us.
Yeah, or like hidden in our own minds.
Yeah, it really challenges how we think about reality and what's possible.
And that's what makes the Enfield Poltergeist so fascinating. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge.
And the possibility of things beyond our understanding.
Exactly.
So after all this digging, are we any closer to solving the mystery?
Maybe not in the sense of having a clear-cut answer. But we've explored the evidence. We've considered different perspectives. We've questioned our assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think that's given us a much deeper appreciation for the complexity of this case.
It's not just a simple ghost story.
No, it's not.
There's so much more going on.
We've seen how easily our perceptions can be tricked, how our minds can play games with us.
And how much we still don't know about the universe and ourselves.
Exactly.
We started this deep dive looking for answers.
Yeah.
But maybe the real discovery is the journey itself.
That's a great way to put it.
You know, the process of questioning, exploring, expanding our understanding of the unknown.
And who knows, maybe someday new evidence will come to light and give us a clearer picture of what happened in Enfield.
Yeah, until then, the mystery lives on.
It does.
And it keeps us thinking, keeps us curious, keeps us diving deeper into the unknown.
That's the beauty of it.
So to everyone listening out there, keep pondering the evidence, keep questioning, keep exploring. Was the Enfield Poltergeist a hoax, a psychological phenomenon, or something truly paranormal? The answer, like the events themselves, remains a mystery. But that's what keeps us coming back for more, isn't it? The thrill of the unknown. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Enfield Poltergeist.